Well, thanks for coming along, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ryan, and this is Ralph. He's going to be talking with me a bit about the book, and we'll be talking about the book. And if anyone's got any questions, we'll ask that at the end. So if anyone does have anything really exciting, you can just put your hand up at the end, and we'll get it to you. And that's basically it. So this area is called the Undercroft, and this features in the book, so that's why we're here. So.
And that's why we're doing it in daylight as well. So to ask a few questions, to start off, can you tell everybody what the book's about and where the idea came from?
Well, basically, it's one of these where if I say too much, it'll give away the whole thing. But basically, it's called The Firewatcher's Daughter, and it follows the story of a girl called Fire, which is a Scottish Gaelic name. And her dad is convicted of a form of witchcraft, and he's burned at the stake like convicted witches often were back in the 1600s. And that's not a spoiler, that happens right at the start of the book, so you know that from the word go. And it's basically the story of her life after that, and things take a bit of a turn for the dark.
Just when you think it's dark, it gets even darker each chapter. We go along with 3/4 of the book itself, and it's getting darker, so you don't know what to expect at the very end.
Very dark.
Yeah.
And you said you're about 3/4 of the way through it. By that point, you'll have noticed that a bit like, well, for anyone that's ever seen any of Billy Connolly's sketches, you'll know that he goes off on a tangent and goes off on something else, but then it all goes back to the original thing he was talking about. And that happens a little bit in this, where characters and plots are introduced, and then it sort of tells their story and how it's all connected into the bigger, wider picture. So there's a hangman that is introduced into the story, and it follows his tale and spooky stuff that happens to him. There's a wolf. Wolf's in it. So there's a few different things going on, but it all relates back to the one.
The wolf is a good wee twist. Yeah, another question. Right. Where did you get the names for all your characters, and why is Fire's father's name never revealed?
Well, the names for the characters, Fire is, like I mentioned, it's an old Scottish Gaelic name, which I wanted to try and make it sound sort of authentic. But when I first started writing it, I was trawling through websites online trying to find a name that would suit for the characters. And I came across this one. I thought, oh, that's a perfect name for the main character, Fire, which I did actually. So, Scottish Gaelic name meaning is piece of darkness, but the same name in Italian is a flickering fire. So, completely by coincidence, I sort of stumbled across it. I thought, that'll do me, perfect.
That fits right.
The wolf is called Mada, which quite literally translates to as wolf. So I thought, perfect. So just came across those and I thought it fit in with what I was trying to do. And her dad, the Firewatcher, I'd deliberately wanted to try and create a bit of mystery about that character, because although he dies right at the very beginning, later on in the story you do find out more about him. But I wanted to create a bit of mystery about it so that you know enough about him that you want to find out more, but at the same time I didn't want you to know exactly who he was, so that so that it's a sort of mystery to everyone. So that's where that came from.
And his name's never revealed, is it?
Never revealed. Not even to me. I haven't thought of it.
Right, the story's obviously set in the local area, like obviously the museum. How much is actually fact and what's been made up?
Well, all of the places in the book are set in real places, so they're all local places. Like it's right at the beginning there's a scene at Edinburgh Castle, there's a couple of scenes in here, in the Undercroft, there's parts of it take place in Roslin, there's parts of it in Last Wade, but although I've based it in real places, I haven't been totally accurate with the settings, if you like. I mean, there's one of the settings for the book is an orphanage in Last Wade, which in the book burns to the ground. But to my knowledge, there was never an orphanage that ever burnt to the ground in Last Wade. But the building that it's based on, I don't know how well you know Last Wade, but if you go from the Bonnyrigg side, past the paper mill and over the bridge, and take your first left, and if you walk along that path along by the river, sort of leads round and up towards, there's a couple of graveyards up that way. Just before the graveyards there's a big building which used to be a school years ago, but so it was only ever a school, but it's now flats. People live there now. So that's the setting, but it's completely different to how it appears in the book. So I've tried to keep it fairly accurate, but I've deliberately changed a few things. And also, the old Roslin Lee Hospital in Roslin, that features in the book as well. But the chapter that appears in the book is set in the 1600s, whereas the building wasn't actually built until the 1800s. So it's like 200 years before it was ever built. But it's places that people will recognise, just not necessarily perfectly accurate, if you know what I mean.
And that work for your book, did you sort of work your book around the artwork, or did you pick the artwork after
Well,
the book was written?
The artwork, there's 6 different pieces of art in the book that are by a Polish painter called Mariusz Lewanowski, and I had came across him a few years ago online, just through various things, and I fell in love with his work, but I didn't have any intentions of using his artwork for anything I was doing. It was only when I was about halfway through writing this that I was supposed to be writing, and ended up procrastinating and looking at other stuff online. And I was looking at some of his paintings, and I came across this, and I instantly thought, how have I not seen that? Because I just loved it, and as soon as I saw it, I just knew I was looking at one of the main characters in the book. So when I saw it, I thought I need to use that. So I ended up getting in touch with them, and I said, what would be the possibility of using that? And one thing led to another, and the more that I looked at these paintings, the more of them began to seem relevant to what was in the story. So it was sort of coincidental that it all sort of came together that way.
Yeah, for the pictures that in the book do actually fit really well with some of the chapters. So
Yeah.
it's perfect, yeah.
I mean, he's a bit of an abstract horror painter. So I'm pretty sure that whatever was in his mind when he was painting likes of that is completely different to what I thought when I was writing the book. But somehow they just sort of work together.
Yeah, definitely. This book compared to your last book, your writing style, what was different for writing both books?
Well, I think
They're both very dark and different, but
well, with this one, the first one took probably about 2.5 years from start to finish doing the writing, but that was only sort of chipping away at it a little bit here and a little bit there. I would go for a month or more without actually doing anything on it. Whereas with this one, I used, I think it was lockdown number 2,
Yeah.
I think. Feels weird saying it, lockdown number 2. So I had the sort of story sort of plotted out in my head, and because I had all that time, I could get a big chunk of it done fairly early on. But what I found with this one, compared to the last one, I mean, my previous one, I knew exactly how it was going to pan out from the very beginning, and the finished book was more or less as I had originally saw it. This one, however, went way off of the original plan, because what I thought I was writing, I would suddenly think, oh no, I can change that, and then that would then change something that happens later on. Because I changed that, I'd have to then go back and rewrite another bit. So the whole thing ended up being completely different to how I had originally saw it, but works
and
well.
two of the characters that appear in this book are in the first book. Do you see a future for them in future books?
Yeah, well, two of the characters from my previous book crop up in this, but they don't play a big role in it. Basically, what had happened was, you know how I was saying that Faya's dad is bumped off right at the very beginning of the book? Well, I knew I was going to bump him off, but I didn't know the reason why it was going to get burned. Basically, I mean, it sounds really dark. I knew I want to burn this guy, but why am I burning him? And it wasn't until I was actually writing the chapter, I had him on the fire, burning, and I thought, I still don't know why. And then, I don't know what it was, it just sort of clicked in my mind. What if he's accused of starting the plague in Edinburgh? Because my last book was based around the plague in Edinburgh in the 1600s. And so I thought, it's the same time period, so if he's accused of having started that, then the plague doctors from the first book are the ones responsible for basically doing that. So this sort of, the book sort of ties in, because they're in the same sort of universe. You know how, because you know how you get a lot of things like, for me, there's like the Planet of the Apes franchise where you've got all the different reboots that are all sort of in the same universe, but they're not actually directly linked to each other. And plus you've got all like the Marvel films and everything where you've got different offshoots that exist in the same sort of world, if you like, but they're different stories, so that you don't have to have seen that one to know what's going on in that one. So it's a little bit like that. But there is I've got a way that I could possibly link it all together in one big story in like 2 or 3 books' time, but I don't know if I actually want to bring them all together, if you know what I mean. But I have thought of a way that I could potentially bring it all together, but I don't know if I will.
Yeah, that was going to be the next question. What was the next project going to be? Is it going to be all one time?
Well, I've always got ideas bouncing around in my head, and I have actually got an idea for a book that would pick up where this one finishes, but I haven't quite worked all that out in my head yet, so probably won't be doing that one right away. But I do have an idea for a film that I'd like to do, which may or may not involve this place, but we'll see.
I was just going to say, that book there so far, looks like it could be a film.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
I mean, that's the thing, even just sitting here looking at all the different, where I'm sitting, I've got a view right through these archways here, and my mind's always ticking over with ideas of what I can see happening, but for anyone that reads that, you know that my mind doesn't necessarily work in the same way as everyone else.
And what about an Undercrofty picture, the character Rosen from
Yeah, well, there's, what I'll maybe do actually, if it's alright, I'll maybe do a quick, I'll maybe read you a little bit of one of the chapters that are based in here, and then I'll sort of show you where I see it. So this is chapter 10, and there's a couple of bits in here that would potentially give away the story, but I'm going to try to sort of not give away too much, if you know what I mean. So this is, like I said, chapter 10, it's set in here. The world out there is getting bleaker by the day. With every person the plague picks off. I was talking about the plague, it's doing the rounds. So with every person the plague picks off, the tougher it becomes to bear for everyone. She only ever ventures out into the world to scavenge for food and scraps of wood to keep the fire going during the long cold winter months, which have been made even harsher lately thanks to the thick blanket of snow which covers the ground. Maisie pauses to scan her surroundings, checking to see that no one has followed her back to her hiding place. The heavy snowfall consumes the air like a thick white fog, rendering it impossible to see more than a metre or two in front of herself. Even the head frame of the abandoned mine, which towers over her, has been swallowed by the glistening, flurrying veil of white. And when you leave here and look up it's the big wheel up the very top, that comes into the story much later on, right at the very end. But I'm not going to read that. But anyway, where was it? The small trench she created as she trudged through the knee-deep snow has already started to fill in. Soon there will be no trace that she was ever here at all. Satisfied that she is alone, Maisie lets herself through the metal gate, same when the Yule came in, which leads into the sanctuary of the unused Undercroft. She scurries off into the maze of imposing titanic archways, desperate to get as far away from the freezing, biting cold as possible. It's been a little over 6 months since she settled here, and it's taken almost all of that time to grow accustomed to the eerie sound her footsteps make as they crunch against the gravelly, uneven ground, bouncing off the exposed Victorian brickwork and echoing in the air around her. But after ploughing her way through the snow, enduring the harsh conditions outside, she's never been happier to hear it. She ducks to avoid walking straight into the low-hanging cables and steel bars which precariously dangle from the ceiling of one of the arches. She dumps her heavy sack of supplies into one of the pitch-black alcoves before working her way deeper into the network of giant brick arches. On her way, she reaches up into one of the old coal wagons on the train tracks, which you can see over there, and she retrieves an armful of logs from her stash and heads straight to the dying embers of this morning's campfire, her frostbitten fingers trembling so badly she almost drops the whole lot on the ground. She makes it and thrusts a couple onto the still hot ashes. Maisie stands as close as she can without setting herself alight, desperately attempting to get some heat into her body. She stands like that for well over an hour, feeding one log at a time to the fire until a little bundle has carried her, until that little bundle she had carried with her have all been reduced to ash and the flickering firelight has faded to darkness. She only fleetingly averts her eyes from the flames to glance towards a pack of wolves that she shares the deserted mine with. Normally, they'd be rummaging around in the discarded tools and machinery the miners left behind when the pit closed down, but the chill that howls through the drafty undercroft has sapped them of their energy. All she sees is a dozen shivering bundles of fur gathered around a fire to garner whatever heat they can from the flames. Their eyes cut through the darkness, silently observe an old woman who keeps him fed, watered and sheltered like a sane person would a dog or a cat. Having just about thawed out, and with the fire reduced to rapidly fading glowing embers, she decides to call it a night to try and get some sleep in the little makeshift bed she has made for herself. She turns her back on the wolves, who watch her ease herself down onto the grubby mattress lying on the ground with a grunt, pulling the blanket up to her neck and wrapping it snugly around herself to hopefully keep the frost at bay overnight. She rolls over onto her side and comes face to face with the ancient skeletal body that's barely alive. She'd that bit stumbling because I've tried to cut out a bit that gives away a little bit, so I tried to cut a bit out there. But basically, she comes face to face with this thing here, and it's lying on the ground next to it. So that's basically that. So she's basically hiding out in here, a pack of wolves and this nice looking person. So that's basically one of the settings for in here, and all gets revealed right at the end. But on top of the artwork by Marius that features in here, there's also a couple of photos. One of them, you might not see it that well, but this here, and that is this archway just here. So I see it. I would probably say fire and that bit there, and mattress is probably about there, where you are, let's see. So.
I think that wraps up my questions. Has anybody else got any questions they'd like to ask?
If I haven't bored you enough. Well, if there's no questions, then I'll say thanks for coming along, and hopefully I haven't bored you too much.